Joining me right now, Stephen Yates at Yates Comms on Twitter. He joins us weekly, and we are very grateful for his time. He's one of the smartest people out there. I would fight someone the most knowledgeable about this. This is his wheelhouse. He owns the wheelhouse. He built it. And we're grateful for him to join us, especially, I mean, he's in, as you can see, a special Lego bunker, and he's in the middle of a move. He can do it all. Stephen, always good to see you. I think, and this might be kind of rhetorical, but just, for everybody out there watching and listening across the country, Taiwan, I think they pretty well know that the United States would not abandon them, right? If anything were to, I know that the increased jet incursions into their airspace is a little nerve rattling, but really they do realize that this is saber rattling, and that they hopefully recognize that. I hope that the U.S. would stand with them. I got less confident about that as I asked.
Well, we have thousands and thousands of people who literally risk their lives and their families to side with us with pretty firm faith the United States wouldn't turn their back on them, that are waiting to be rescued out of Afghanistan. And so there really is a big asterisk next to the full faith in the U.S. government out there. At this time, it would be very, very rational for people in Taiwan to say, yeah, we love America. America stood by us. We're for sort of this Pax Americana that used to exist of liberal democracies, where liberal was a good thing. It meant freedom, not being beaten to death by police in Australia. All kinds of things out there that we used to all take for granted that right now are suspended in disbelief. And so I think that the people of Taiwan are determined to fight for their freedom. What most of the wider world doesn't really understand is that China's selling a lie. Now, we're used to people selling lies in our politics now, but they're selling a truly big one, as in Taiwan has never belonged to the People's Republic of China. China is advancing the idea that because of their race, you must belong to us. That sounds racist to me. And so I don't understand why anyone would give it any credence. But there are people who are not ethnically Chinese in Taiwan. It's a multi-ethnic democracy. And it does matter whether it stands or falls, as we discussed before. There's everything from the technology you hold in your hands to the idea of, you give the fastest growing military on the planet more access to blue water Pacific. That's not necessarily good. So a whole host of reasons people should care. A lot of reasons the people of Taiwan should feel confident. But my goodness, if you just watch what happened over the last year, you can't blame anyone for doubting America at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, well, it goes right into one of the things I was going to bring up with you. I was reading about how apparently 70,000 Hong Kongers have moved to the UK at a rate of about 5,000 a week. It's estimated that that's about the average of 2 sold out jetliners a day. That's pretty unbelievable. So people they're just leaving. They're just leaving. And then that's major. And I think the other question that comes from this, because I would imagine the people who are able to leave are probably some of the wealthiest people. They're going to be out first, and then everybody I'm sure that is going to, and can try, is going to. What does that do to Hong Kong in terms of being such a financial powerhouse? And is that going to trigger some kind of financial crisis for Hong Kong, for all of these people leaving? Especially,
I know a lot of people who have stayed in Hong Kong, and they intend to try to be strategic and rational, not pick fights they can't win, et cetera, to stick it out because it's their homeland. They care about it. It was once a great place to be. And they're hopeful that this rise of an ethno-nationalist authoritarianism in China will peak and fall, and then they can maybe reclaim what their homeland once was for them. That's the long hope. It's really kind of amazing that in 1997, when the sovereignty went from Britain to China, that more people didn't take advantage of being British nationals having been a colony and left then. They believed that there was a chance. And these years later now, they see there really isn't that much of a chance. There's a lot of split families in this deal where some stay and some go abroad. There's some where it's split family where the father might have been a popular professional or a politician. He had to leave, otherwise he's going to go into jail and never be seen again. And the other family's just trying to make its way. But it's truly sad. But really, it's this old dilemma. of do you stay and try to hold off against authoritarianism and preserve some sense of freedom, or do you bail? And we have a microcosm of this among the people who try to decide, do I stay in California to have some form of freedom and hope and prosperity, or do I go to a state that maybe is more rational, more America, and a better fit for me? For Hong Kong, it's life and death. At least for us now in California, it's lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I mean, for now, it's lifestyle, which could, obviously change. I mean, we've just seen how quickly it's changed just for Hong Kong. Kind of still keeping with China and what's happening, relations with in Pacific. One of the things I was thinking about, and I didn't ask you last week, is why Canada didn't join the AUKUS deal. And I was reading about how the release of the two Michaels, and of course this was the whole situation where you had two men, both named Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. One of the guys apparently was like a consultant to North Korea and friends with Kim Jong-un, which sort of shocks me as how this guy could get caught up in this, because I thought that North Korea and China at least had good relations. I mean, North Korea serves as an attack dog, but they were accused. They weren't actually arrested. They were just detained and accused of threatening their national security. But magically, now they get to go now that Canada has agreed to a release of the Huawei executive. So I would just think that a situation like this, where you have Canadians that are in China, which I think that kind of brings up a question, is it even safe to travel in China? Which I don't know why anyone would go at this point. But why didn't Canada join AUKUS? Because clearly, I mean, their location, they're in the Pacific. I'm curious about that. What can you tell us about this and why that didn't even at least move them to consider? Maybe they weren't asked.
Well, odds are they weren't asked. Of course, it would have completely destroyed this eloquent acronym that is AUKUS, which I didn't get a chance to explain. And if you just change around the U.S. and U.K., it changes to AUSUK. Yeah. And you wonder how long it took, how many bureaucrat hours it took to decide which is better, AUKUS or AUSUK. Because I'd hate to say this deal sucks, but it really is much less of a deal.
So you're not a fan of the deal. I just want to lay that. He's not. He doesn't like it.
Because there's so much playing around with this where they're pretending to be flexing, but really this is like the weak kindergarten kid on the playground kind of flexing. They're promising to have some nuclear submarines be brought into the Australian fleet at some point. Well, Right now is right now with the People's Liberation Army Navy. Right now is Xi Jinping. He's big boy flexing right now. And so if you're going to have the UK tick off France and play a little with Australia, which is really still kind of far from China, you're not really dealing with the nub of the issue. The Canadians, and I have to say, I mean, this was the United States government backed the Canadian government in empowering hostage diplomacy. What happens when you begin to pay off people for hostages? More hostages get taken. In this case, you had two innocent people. Now, maybe they're not my kind of people. I don't need to be hanging around in North Korea. I don't need to be hanging around in China. But they sure as heck weren't tearing down the People's Republic regime. They're just hanging out doing their thing. They weren't corrupt. They weren't trying to break sanctions. They weren't trying to empower a nuclear Iran. The Chinese princess was. They weren't kept in a club fed. They were kept incommunicado for all this 3-year period. She was in club fed. She flies home to a hero's welcome. This should have been a big kick right between the legs to Canada and the United States about why did you give up this person who was wanted on these things, pled guilty to these things. In exchange, you got two people who were innocently detained for 3 years. What did you really get for Canada and the United States? And how are you going to keep more people not getting taken hostage? I think it was a disgrace. And I don't know, maybe Canada was just white hot focused on that. Canada had an election. Trudeau might not have wanted to play around with this at that time. Lots of ways to explain it. But I think AUKUS sucks. And this hostage thing sucks even worse.
See, now I'm feeling we're talking to Stephen Yates. And at first, when I first heard it's going to be really hard for me to say AUKUS now. Look at it. He's like that devilish laugh. Oh my gosh. We got to isolate that.
I got you.
Now I'm like, with the AUKUS thing, at first I thought, oh, well, this might be kind of good news. We're sort of pivoting at least because we haven't paid any attention to at all whatsoever what's been happening in the Pacific, except with some, missives about Hong Kong and all of that. And I thought, man, it might be kind of a good thing. And then the France thing happened. And then I was looking at the timeline for when these subs would be out. And I'm like, for the love, if China really wanted to do something, they could. But then the situation with Canada. So Meng Wanzhou, the woman who was the executive with Huawei, I mean, she's basically accused of espionage, and she pled guilty to it. I mean, because she's guilty, and that's what a PR bonanza China has now by welcoming this woman back, and the two Michaels that they call them. Like the two Coreys from the 80s. The two Michaels, now they're being released, and then they have this like hero's welcome for this. She's a spy. That's what a PR boon for them. And that was just given to them on a silver platter. They have to think that if with something that easy, if you have the United States and Canada with something that easy, if they couldn't even stand up to that, like what happens if it gets hard?
That's right. Well, and they were ready, just like with the fall of Afghanistan and their warning to Taiwan about, look, the United States isn't reliable, and so you guys are just going to have to give in to us. They were ready for this, too. And within 24 hours, and really at the time of her welcome home ceremony, they were pumping out the message of what a blessing it is that we have a strong and powerful China, and that these people can't hold China down, and people better not bet against China. And so basically they did their victory lap, and we had no rebuttal whatsoever. I mean, we couldn't get the president to say anything on any subject regardless. But the Prime Minister of Canada, all he could do was, oh, we're so glad that these guys are home. Well, goody for you, Mr. Shirtless Joe. I mean, you shouldn't have had these guys taken. If you have real leaders in the world, the bad guys won't dare take our people hostage.
That's true. That's a great point. Stephen Yates, who hates AUKUS. Always appreciate having you on, Stephen. Thank you so much, as always. And safe travels. I know you're moving, so safe travels while you do that move. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dana. Take care.
You too.